The incompetence of the Ardern government is now cited by most political observers overseas, as well as here in New Zealand, as the reason for New Zealand's lowest ratio of vaccine rollouts of any OECD country. The delayed decision to even order them has the Pfizer vaccine available late to the majority of the country. Many are only now able to get their first dose, while other countries prepared to give their third. Given the increase in community transmission and our low vaccine rate, this new total lockdown is viewed as a rod for the government's back, but for so many others it is catastrophic. The invasion of the coronavirus has given political overlords in the West more opportunity than at any other time to trample on democratic freedoms. The deaths from COVID-19 are tragic, and some form of lockdown was arguably justifiable. But many extremist measures imposed have been extraordinarily cruel, resulting in people dying in utter loneliness, children forbidden from being with their parents, and the sick and the elderly being prevented from holding the hand of someone much loved and needed love when leaving the world behind. We are well overdue, in fact, to look at how we are governed, doubly problematic given that our hard-left coalition is virtually waging war upon us, the country, by implementing identity politics with inevitable consequence. A small minority of part-only Maori extremists, obsessed by a percentage of their racial inheritance, is pushing a Maori supremacy movement endorsed by our government's unmistakable anti-democratic agenda. The push towards constitutional change to establish a co-governance of New Zealand along racial lines, while completely unacceptable, nevertheless brings home the realisation that constitutional change is possible. Moreover, to reclaim our democracy, there is one very practical, achievable piece of legislation which would put us, that's us in New Zealand, in control of determining our own direction, rather than being ruled by our misguided, misrepresented pack that we have down in Wellington, and particularly that small group of powerful individuals now controlling this country under that Ascinda Ardern woman. The answer lies in a reform of political system. It will not come from our virtual leaders, of course. They wouldn't want this, profiting from their domination. It will have to come from tipping point of New Zealanders demanding it. We are well overdue to insist on a far better outcome than being forced into complying with the agenda of that Jacinda Ardern. And no call for reform can possibly disregard Switzerland, the only real democracy in the world these days, prosperously and harmoniously balancing 4 different ethnic groups. Shouldn't we be asking ourselves, what is Switzerland's secret? Why is the Swiss system so far superior to ours here in New Zealand? Firstly, the Swiss are well aware of the corruption of power, will not allow any individual to stay at the head of the country for more than a year. Ask any New Zealand or Australia to name the current president of Switzerland. Virtually no one can. The answer actually is Guy Parmelin. The reason few know any of their names is that after 1 year, he or she, they just must step down. The next in line from their cabinet of 7 only ministers steps up for a year, usually the former finance minister. Members of Parliament of Switzerland do not regard the position as full-time. Most have regular jobs in home districts as farmers, doctors, secretaries, architects, chefs or housewives. The Swiss believe in the notion of citizen legislature, staying close to their constituents, keeping one foot in the real world, unlike our career politicians, for the Swiss rejecting being a politician as their main profession enables them to keep a stronger grip on reality than shown by so many of our own MPs, where our political parties expect their numbers to conform to hierarchical edicts. And then, of course, we have the Prime Minister, who can put forward her suggestions whom we should have as the Governor-General to represent the Queen in our democracy. And look at the person she has chosen. She ticks all the boxes for the Maori caucus. This is a disgraceful situation we have at the moment, and this Jacinda Ardern. This Jacinda Ardern, under the Swiss arrangement, would be put in her place so quick she wouldn't even know who kicked her up the arse. On the contrary of Swiss having rejected top-down legislation, proposals for new laws have to come from the people themselves, a practice which would make it impossible for this Ardern's government to be foisting on the people of New Zealand its current immensely damaging proposals like the new hate speech legislation and taking over Crown and local council assets on the basis of racial preference, promoting the divisiveness to which we are being subjected, particularly in the name of water. It simply could not happen in Switzerland. And believe me, it should not be happening in New Zealand. Well, why is it happening in New Zealand? Because we still have so many bloody dipsticks out there who support this Ardern woman, who say that she is the saviour for New Zealand. That is crap, that is bullshit, it is nonsense. She is destroying this country, and the only way that we're going to get control back is get rid of her and her crazy government, and maybe the people of New Zealand to insist that we bring in a system similar to that of Switzerland, that government cannot enforce any legislation until after 100 days, and giving the chance of everybody to have their say. Do you think anything that this Ardern woman put forward with her cabinet would get through in New Zealand if they had to have a 100-day chill-off period? I don't think so. I'd be surprised if anything that she said or did would be actually passed by the majority of this land. Just think about it. Wouldn't it be a wonderful idea bringing in and instituting the Swiss system? A wonderful idea, but that would certainly curtail the insane, yes, the mad, the sane ambitions of that crazy Cindy. The only problem being, of course, is how would we start a movement to implement it? Universities were certainly not supported. School teachers certainly would not support it. They know that their lies and their quackery would soon be exposed. And I doubt National would either, you know. I would certainly 100% support it. No one ever hears of Switzerland being in a mess. Why would you, when common sense is only allowed to prevail?